How you doing, Jeff? Hang it in there. I got one of those too. Except I don't go out at night. There are 2 chairs open up at front if anybody wants to sit. We got some sort of damage.
Okay, well, it's 2 o'clock, and if this is too loud or it's hot, then please let me know and we'll make adjustments. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Okay, can we start with a roll call, please?
Okay, we have Dave Edern, Ken Evans, Ray Lobot, Jeff Randall, Jerry Carbone, Jim Carter, and Karen Gilmartin, and present, so we have a full quorum.
Thank you. And certification of quorum, proof of voice?
Yes, notice was posted per statute.
Thank you. First order of business is approval of the minutes. I open it up to the board for discussion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any comments? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. Next will be the president's report. I hope everybody's enjoying themselves and having fun in the sun, playing bocce, pickleball, and tennis, and getting fit in the gym, taking an exercise class, or participating in another of the great amenities offered at the community center. You know, so far, everything's been running smoothly in 2020. The 20 extra parking spots that we added during 2019 have seemed to solve the parking problem for now. We've had only one afternoon, not the morning, but the afternoon, where the parking lot was full for about an hour, and that was due to an unexpected arrival of 50 more people for a program, a seminar that Lynn was hosting. And what a great job for Lynn that she's drawn in more people despite saying please pre-register. So things have been solid in that regard. We have some big events planned in March. We may exceed our parking capacity for a few hours. That has historically been the case for some of these events. But administration will be sending out email blasts before those events so you can pre-plan and carpool or walk or choose whatever means of transportation to and from. It's that time of year where we'll be mailing out the annual proxies, and we'll be having an election this year. There's 2 spots that are open on the board, and there are 4 candidates that submitted their nominations. You should expect to get them in the mail in early March. Please review all the materials, make your decisions, and return them to the administrative office before March 26th so your vote counts. Your vote matters, so get it in there, get it done, and get it in there in time so it counts. Along with the proxy, you'll receive a very short questionnaire of 3 questions from the Long Range Planning Committee. Please take the time to fill this out and turn it in with your proxies. Your feedback from the questionnaire will be important at beginning helping. Will be a starting point for the Long Range Planning Committee. Really, there are a lot of important dates coming up on the calendar in March. So again, at the end of this month, so you'll get them very early in March, you'll be getting the annual packet with the proxies and that questionnaire that I referenced earlier. On March 5th, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we'll have a Meet the Candidate Forum where everyone can come and meet the 4 individuals running for the board. On March 8th, March 8th, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think I saw Frank in here, we're having what, the 3rd annual Spaghetti Ball?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a can't miss event. On the 19th, there is the monthly board meeting at 2 p.m. On March 26th, there's the foundation annual meeting, the residents meeting, or the evening meeting on the 7th, at 7 at night, I should say. And on March 27th, Lynn's planning our Friday end of the season party, so it's going to be a busy March, it's going to be a good March. Those are my comments, and I think I'll turn it over to you, Ken.
Thank you.
I tried to vary some of the commentary so that I keep people awake, but I would make the following comment. It takes about at least the first quarter before the numbers really mean anything. 1 month does not make a season, number one, and number two, the first couple of months, the Finance Committee and Paul and Jim, our accountant, are trying to do a better job of distributing expected cost and revenues more in line with variations during the year rather than a 1/12. So this first month, I'll make some other comments. I'll focus on a couple of other things. I started talking to some people around the community regarding the election and what was going on. I got pretty excited that for the first time in a while, I think we have a real election with some qualified candidates and a lot of enthusiasm, and that is the best thing for the community. But a couple of people said, we don't really know, we don't pay a lot of attention to the financials. You guys always end up with more money at the end of the year at the beginning, and that's a great job, but what's going on? And I said, well, we have a finance committee that we've instituted to ensure that no matter what the makeup of the board, there will be a core of people who have financial skills and independence to review the things that go through. But more than that, this community does a complete audit every year. Somebody said, do you do an audit or review? We do an audit, and the auditor's name is, if I pronounce it right, NOAC, N-O-A-C-K. They've been our auditor for the last few years, and we will periodically send the audit out for competitive bids, but they know our organization and they've worked closely with us. Because we now have an operating finance committee, the beginning of March, the finance committee will get a review of the first draft of the audit, make comments, make sure we're comfortable with it, and that committee, of which I chair as treasurer, will then present it to the board, and then there will be a final approved audit that would be available before the annual meeting. Historically, the only difference between the monthlies and the annual is our auditor uses depreciation, and that impacts our balance sheet, but in terms of cash, there's no change from the numbers that you see. So that's the beginning of the presentation, and just a couple of comments on this page. Accounts receivable, we are blessed because our communities pay us at the beginning of the year for the year's dues. We have, I don't know how many people are from Ariel, but Ariel has historically been very poor at paying. The good news is we get enough cash in that they don't cause us any cash grief, but they've got about a $300-some-thousand bill that they owe us, and we would like to see those of you from Ariel to put a little pressure on your president as well as your managers, the management team, to get that money to us a little faster. And I thought if I made a general announcement, somebody might actually try to get that money into us. Beyond that, we do pretty good. By the end of February, that accounts receivable number will be to a very nominal number, so we're not really worried about it. The next page, again, it's 1 month. Not really much to say, except now that we're 1 month beyond, we're in the middle of February. There's nothing when we put the budget together that we think we'd recommend to the board that we make any change. I will get a little more serious by the end of the first quarter when we have a better feel. We will have also done a better job of projecting out the budget on more of an expected timeline than just 1/12, and it will become a little more accurate for monthly reporting. The resale, again, it's only 1 month. almost traditionally, except if there's a hurricane, of course, project out 100 resales a year. We did that this year, so it says we're running a month down, but at this point I really wouldn't worry too much about it. We didn't get the data on homes on the market or pending sales in time for this report. There's one new page which Jerry asked that we put a couple of numbers out. I know where Jerry's coming from. He'd like to use some of that money, and he'd like to know when he's got it. He's got a new house he wants to buy, and so I guess he wants to use some. No, seriously, let me make 2 points. One is, this is truly a projection, maybe more so than anything else we do as a financial group. We have a projection out many, even more years of the renovations and monies that we spend to maintain all of the foundation's assets. And we do the best we can. We get a group that comes in and does an in-depth review of when we think we're going to spend the money and what it would cost to replace. And then we meaning the Finance Committee and Paul, look at it. And for example, there are a couple of things that we had originally scheduled for 2021. I think we're going to probably move into 2020. But this gives you an idea of the way we're looking at our cash needs. Jerry and Jim especially were around when we took some of the operating core of the resale and kept it in operations, and I asked them if they would give us the opportunity to take the next few years, I don't know what that means, certainly this year and maybe even next year, and move all of the operating piece of the resale into the reserve fund to build it up. And so I've projected out what would happen if we kept that at that level. The good news is that hopefully when Paige and her team come back and say, here's what we think the long-term plan is for this community, here are some things we'd like to spend money on. For example, when Mark and his team started the planning process in 2018, one of the things they came up with from the survey that went out is an interest in having food service on site. And so while Paige and her people are going to start a long-range planning process in more detail, she and her personal friend Bob, who for those of you who don't know is also her husband, heads the committee that is looking at food service. So we're going at it in 2 different directions, and none of that, of course, is in these numbers as an expenditure. So we've got a very solid capital account. So if we want to spend money on food service, if we want to put additions to the building or do whatever, you can see the very bottom line that we are building up enough of a capital account to have money to deal with. And if you look at the year-ending balance for the reserves, which is the reserve for keeping our foundation up to snuff, that number is growing also. So take it, as I've said to the board, take it with a grain of salt when you go out more than a couple years, but that's something at least to look at and consider. So with that, I will pass the chair back.
Thank you.
How about the resale fee? Is it not $4,000?
It is for us, yeah, we have not changed that.
And why is it marked 300,000 up there?
No, that's 300,000 that's 4,000 times the number of sales. 400,000 is the budget, and we're putting 300 of the 400 into
Reserves.
the reserve, and we're putting 100 of the 400 in the capital.
Okay.
That's that percentage, Jerry.
You reversed it. Okay. I just didn't know if we were reducing the resale fee.
Yeah, no.
Other questions for Ken from the board? Paul, how about the manager's report?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So now that season is in full swing and We just want to remind everyone that now many more residents are out biking, walking, or jogging through Pelican Marsh, and so when you're driving through the community, please make sure that you, your guests, and your contractors know what the speed limit is, 25 miles an hour, and are following the speed limit, and also coming to full stops at all stop signs. We just want to keep everyone safe this season as they're out enjoying the lovely weather we're having. This is the time of year when the parking becomes a premium at the community center, as we all know. Dave mentioned earlier, with the additional parking spaces we've added last summer, and the spacing of the morning exercise classes so far, we have not run out of parking spaces. And I think you've been watching it every morning. At our busiest time in the morning, around 9 through 10 a.m., we're still averaging about 10 spots on average open. So we're going to continue to monitor our parking availability throughout this season in the mornings, and we'll see how this changes. Because as we all know, historically our busiest month in March will be coming up, so we'll see how it really impacts us. We also want to stress that when you are parking your car in the lot, that you please make sure that you park within the line parking spaces, leaving room in the adjacent parking spaces so that all spots are always available for use when people are coming to the lot. It's important that we know that when and how many of the members are using the community center throughout the day, so we can better manage with our staff to properly staff it and support the members, and also plan for events so we don't overload the facility in high demand periods. This data is also going to be very helpful, as was mentioned, to the Long Range Planning Committee when they better assess to recommend what future needs will be needed for the community. And if you didn't know already, you can now check in each time you're here at the community center using your cell phone by putting your membership key fob on your phone. There are free apps that you can download on your phone to do this. So many say when they come in, I've got my fob or I lost it, but most of us always have our phones in hand, so now you can always have your membership fob with you to check in. And this will now also go for the gym door, as we've now ordered a new scanner that will be in place by hopefully next week that also can read your phone, so you can check in at the gym, unlock the door, and get access in. I was attending the CDD meeting yesterday, and they reported there's going to be an upcoming project that should have a positive impact for all of the community. There's a master plan being developed where they're going to redo and upgrade all the landscaping in the medians along Pelican Marsh Boulevard, all the way from Airport Road to 41. The CD is working with a landscape architect for this project, and renderings of this proposed design will be available in the upcoming months. And as I find out more about this information and when the project is going to be started, I will update at a later board meeting. Also, to update everyone on a few of the ongoing projects we've been working on, the addition of a half basketball court on the playground is now complete. Pictured is this new court. The great thing about this new basketball court, in the picture you'll see the goal is lowered. The great thing about this new goal is that it goes from regulation height all the way down to 5 feet to cover all age ranges for use. Also, where the swing set once was, where the now basketball court is, a new swing set is on order and should be in by the end of next week. Also, as part of our pickleball court project, the plan was to put in a shaded and additional seating area along the courts. This shading is under contract for install, and hopefully it should be ready to go in by the 1st of March. And picture, just to give you an idea, is a rendering what that shading will look like between the courts for the pickleball players and for the people using court number 2 on the tennis. And once the shading is installed, then we'll better be able to assess and determine what kind of seating should go in that area that will match. And as always, during this time of the busy season, we really appreciate everyone's patience and support of the staff as we do our best in assisting everyone in signing up for all the events and other activities that we have to offer, and we appreciate that. So that's my report. Any questions?
Any questions for Paul? Jim?
Sure. Paul, what about the mats and bumpers for the basketball court area?
Yeah, we just, whoops. when we initially installed the basketball court, we didn't have it fencing along the left side of the court, as you see, was a drop-off. We just had it installed as of this week. So now that's installed, we've now got mats coming in for padding.
Yeah.
So for those aggressive basketball players,
Somebody walk around with.
so when Ray's out
face.
there playing, hardball, so.
Yeah, Paul, in the discussions of CDD, did they mention the entrance signs on 41 and Airport?
No, it wasn't. There was a homeowner who did email me about her concern of the entry gates and some of the signs need to be updated. I did let her know that the best way to communicate that to the CDD is to come to meetings directly and get on record so that it goes along faster. So I did pass it on to the CDD via email, but again, for any homeowner who has an issue or concern about something the CDD manages, the best route is to attend the meetings directly, which are the Wednesday before, then 4 meetings, the third Wednesday of the month at 9 a.m. here in this office or room, and it'll get addressed sooner than later.
Okay. The other question I had, did they mention anything about resurfacing from approximately Ariel out to Airport? That is one area that they have never resurfaced, at least in a number of years. And I don't know what their schedule is for that, but have they put that into a schedule? To your knowledge, do they have any plans to do that?
The only thing they mentioned is they mentioned budgeting for monies to upkeep the asphalt. The only thing he mentioned as far as work coming up on the asphalt was work along the west side of Pelican Marsh Boulevard from 41 up to about Spanish Oaks. That I heard it making. But I will ask them if they have a in writing they can provide the board and for the residents to see a schedule of the proposed road work coming up.
Okay, thank you.
Was there any mention at all about the sidewalks? Because we got more people walking in the street than ever, and we're gonna run somebody over, or either with a car or a bike, one or the other, before the sidewalks look like a bombing run in Vietnam.
There was a resident also in the meeting who addressed or commented on the sidewalks, and certain areas were so bad they had to walk out into the street to go around. All they commented was is that if any homeowner sees an issue like that, is to call the CDD or John Hanover, let them be aware of it, and they will look at it and address it as needed.
I think the thing to do, candidly, is write a letter to the county, because they're in strict violation, okay, how the sidewalks should be constructed and maintained, because Pelican Marsh Boulevard is under county jurisdiction, and I believe the sidewalks are included in that. And we should maintain to their specifications. And those sidewalks are long past what the specs are. They're up, down, sideways, sloped, it's like, walking through West Virginia.
I know that, Paul, I know it's not part of their responsibility,
Yeah.
but on US 41, they have building a sidewalk on the east side, connect up with the shopping plaza back to our entrance. And if that has as much traffic on it as the one that they built on the east side of Airport Road, it would probably make a good place for people to race bicycles or anything they want, because nobody will use it. Now, I know they don't have any say over it, but I wonder if they had any comment on it, because it's kind of a question with those state mandated funds or do that come out of the county?
It's a requirement out of the feds for blue zone, so that people would utilize bicycles and walking in lieu of transportation by vehicle. And that it's a mandate out of the feds. They got the money, it's free, they got to spend it, and that's why it's getting done.
Okay, thanks, Sherry.
I have a question, Paul. Have you got any feedback from the women at the front desk on an increase in people checking in? Or is that still being monitored, or how's that going? Because that's been a concern.
We're still monitoring it. I'm actually going to work with Patrick. We're going to, I think at the end of this month, we're going to be downloading all the data to see what the ratio of check-ins. Hopefully it will be an uptick from last month. Then I'll report back.
We're doing all the data that way. not just,
Well, yeah, this is also for tennis too, but each month we download that and see if we're trending hopefully in the right direction.
So the board wants to continue to encourage all owners to use their files when they check in to use services, so we have those metrics. And we also want to thank you if you have been adhering to that request in the past as well.
Can I go back to something that was said earlier, because Sandy has invited the head of the CDD to the president's meeting on Monday, Paul. So some of the things that have come up here, I think we should make sure we cover again on Monday with him. Get some more input.
Thank you. We will.
Good point.
Paul, question on the key fobs. I know even I get confused by it. When we come in and check in at the front desk, when we come into the center, and our only objective is to go to the fitness center, we use the key fob then also. Are we screwing up your matrix by checking in twice?
You don't have to
Just
check.
go directly to the fitness center.
Yeah, it makes it easier for us to interpret the data if you just go directly to the gym and check in, rather than double checking in. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move forward to old business, and the first item we have is the long-range planning committee member appointments and presentation. And I'd like to introduce Paige, who's the chairperson of the long-range committee, Paige Giannetti. Turn it over to you, Paige.
Hi, everybody. I'm Paige Giannetti. I live in Ekeritz, and I'm the head of the recently formed Long Range Planning Committee. So I'm here today to get buy-in to the new members on the committee, and then to give you a little bit of an update, very brief, on what our next steps are. So we have up on the screen, hopefully, the names of the committee members who are being recommended. I know about half of them are here this afternoon, so if you could just stand up when I read your name, and I'll just make a couple comments about you. The first one.
I was being smart.
Oh, okay, I didn't know what you said, sorry. Okay, so Matt, I know you're over here, this is Matt Barger, and Matt has a background in real estate development, and I've heard that he was responsible for developing the beautiful Coconut Point shopping facility. Greg DeWitt, I don't think is here with us today. I think he's unavailable. Joe Dazio, I saw Joe out there, if you could stand up, Joe. Joe has a background in IT consulting and also has been on other boards where he's been overseeing long-range planning. John LaRosa, I think, is unavailable. John has quite significant investment background, also including turning around large financial organizations. Tony Sherman also could not be here today. Tony has a background in real estate administration and property management, quite extensive. And then the last person who I know is here is Michael Smith, if you want to stand up. Michael has a background in business and marketing, and also competitive analysis and analytics, so we hope to put his skills to good use as well. So I just want to mention that the team members were selected from a number of people who interviewed, who expressed interest in being on the Long Range Planning Committee, and the final recommendation was based not just on their interview responses, but also wanting to have a diverse team. So if they lived in a condo or a single-family home, where they lived in the Pelican Marsh community, what types of activities they participated in, so that we have a cross-section of tennis, bocce, pickleball, fitness center, other social types of activities, and a variety of factors, just so we could make sure that we were representing the community completely as much as possible. So those people were interviewed, and then we're here to make a recommendation to the board today for approval.
Are there any questions from the board for Paige?
Questions? I'd like to make a motion to accept the candidates to the Long Range Planning Committee.
Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Thank you, and welcome to, question back there.
Just a question, if we had a suggestion to make to this committee, how should that be presented? What's the best way to present it? or to pose a thought or a suggestion?
You know, I would, at this stage, I'd feel free to send me or any of the committee members an email. I can, my email address is paigegiannetti@gmail.com, 2 N's, 2 T's. And that would be a good place to start. I'm also going to talk about in the next steps some other ways that you can provide input. Yeah.
I have a question with respect to the number of members on that particular committee. Is the old committee resigning, or are these going to be added to the old committee?
There are 2 different committees. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about that over here.
Sure. Rocco, there's 2 committees. There's the Facilities Planning Committee. That's what we called the Long Range Planning Committee last year. And they did a lot of work. And then we narrowed it down to shorter intermediate term decisions. Then they subsequently decided that they weren't the right body of people to do real long-term planning. So in the last couple of months, we started working on putting this program together to look more toward the future. So there are the 2 committees this page said.
Yeah, and I should have said, if you go back to that first slide, Paul, I don't know if that's what's still up there or not, but the objective is to develop a long-range plan 3 to 5 years out at minimum. So it's truly to focus on those years out. And the current committee has been charged with a little bit more closer in specific projects. So that's worked really well for what that committee has been previously asked to do. So, okay. Next steps. So now that we have the team approved, we'll be gathering the team together and we'll be reviewing and discussing a charter that I had drafted a little while ago that's been approved by the board previously. We'll be talking our way through that charter and making any modifications that we feel make sense. Now we'll also be forming some subcommittees. So I'll say if you're particularly interested in an area that you think is relevant, you can reach out to me. We'll be dividing and conquering as we go through the situation analysis, I'll call it. So a historical SWOT where we talk about our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats as a Pelican Marsh Foundation. We'll be doing internal and external trends. So an example of an internal trend would be, what's going on in terms of the various activities we have here at Pelican Marsh. Are they on the upswing or downswing? How big are they? What's the demand? What do the demographics look like? How are the property values doing? Things like that. We'll have some external trends. We'll be talking with the county to see what kind of plans might be in place that would affect us. We'll be reaching out to Pelican Marsh CDD, Pelican Marsh Country Club, Golf Club, so that we have the appropriate inputs in place as we think about what could be affecting our future. We'll also be doing quite a bit more, I'll say, customer research with the Pelican Marsh residents. So Dave mentioned the survey, 3 questions that'll be part of the proxy. That'll just be a start. So we'll do additional focus groups and probably a more detailed survey when the time is right that makes sense. And then we'll do what are the implications. So we don't want to do all that data gathering and then just have it sit there. So what's the important learnings that come out of that and how will that affect our objectives and strategies? And we'll have check-ins with the board and with all of you to just make sure people are giving this input along the way. And that's it.
Paige, will you have anything more for us at the annual meeting in a month?
Depending on our first meeting, I would hope yes, that we would.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So we can expect another summary presentation.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you, Paige.
Thank you.
That's great. Welcome aboard, everybody on the committee. We appreciate it. Okay, 8.2.
Can we go back to old business?
Yes, that's where I was, yes, go ahead.
That's 8.
Yep.
A basic old business is Comcast.
Mm-hmm.
Where are we? How are we?
Outstanding.
What's the
conversions.
schedule?
The latest report from Comcast is we're hovering right at 100 homes. I think it's like right below 100 now, yet to be converted. And Comcast still owes us a planned report of their plan to start shutting down the old coax system and strictly going into the fiber optics only. At that point, where those homeowners who have not responded to our numerous requests to convert will then at that point lose their internet and TV service. But we can't do that until Comcast gives us those dates, and we've got to be able to work on that.
We sat down with a meeting almost 3 months ago.
December, early
And we
December.
were gonna get that.
I agree.
You know, what are we doing? Going to the Middle East to pick it up and bring it over? I mean, 3 months, and there's gotta be a schedule date that says we're gonna start X date, and it's gonna take us X days to complete. So, you know, it's just
We
dragging,
bring
dragging,
another
and dragging.
Meeting, again, like we did a few months back with the heads of state, with Comcast, and say, what's going on? You got to move.
So let's carry that as an open item under old business next month, and let's see if we can,
David, I
Yeah.
think what you should do is pick up the phone, call the head honcho and say, hey, what's going on? We need something specific. You've already bypassed what you told us 3 months ago. Okay, we're down to 100 people. We don't have to worry about 1,800, so we're in good shape. But to keep lingering, we get nowhere. We keep passing it on, table it, and they're doing what they want to do. They have employment issues, I understand that.
that's what I was gonna say.
But, you know, where they're earmarked for getting something done. Okay, if they're trying to sell the same setup to the next Pelican up the, street,
Mhm.
if they call us up, what we're gonna tell them,
It's not gonna be a flowing
it's not gonna be a good report. All right, that's why they're losing business to Hotwire. Hotwire just picked up the moorings. Okay? And it's things like that. So I think we have some basis to put some pressure on them, but we're not. If you want me to call them, I'll be glad to do that.
That's a splendid idea. If you would work with Paul, and I would be happy to join as well, but, don't let me delay it.
I wouldn't let anybody slow me down.
Okay, that's great. So still back on old business, 8.2, approval of the amendments to local gas restriction rules. Board members, that's in our book, under old business. You want to go there?
Read it up.
Oh, this is the last page.
No,
I open it up to comments to the board.
How about if we read it out loud? Somebody, Paul, you want to just read it?
Just give a little framework and background on this. Back in October of last year, when the board adopted the new rules and regulations for the community center, we also wrote in some new language to protect membership use of the facilities, because we were getting so busy in season, especially in the mornings, that we decided at that point that to preserve membership rights of the facility, we stated that local guests, meaning area of people who live in the Naples area coming in for the day, could not come in the morning up until noon, Monday through Friday, from January through March, to protect our parking spaces and the facility for use by membership. However, when the rule went into effect in January, we had a lot of comments from residents, and we were stating, listen, as long as a resident or local guest is not using a parking space, what is the harm of them coming in with their membership friend to sit down and have coffee, play cards in the morning, or do some other activities that aren't impacting the membership's right to use the facility? So we email blasted out about 3 weeks ago stating that at this meeting, the board will be considering a proposed amendment to that guest rule that would relax the rules a little bit to actually say that local guests can come in during this restricted time frame in the mornings, Monday through Friday, as long as they're accompanied by a member, and as long as they didn't participate in an activity that would displace a member using the facility. And we also stated that in this new rule that we would let the directors of each division, tennis and fitness, determine what those fitness classes would be where we should restrict a local guest from participating. Therefore, we don't displace a member, but also if there is room in the classes to have a local guest come in with their membership friend to take an exercise class, and there's room to allow that to happen also. So this new restructuring of the amendment for the rule would incorporate that. All right, I think I can read it for themselves on the screen.
So what you need is a motion to approve.
So if,
Well, first for discussion, go ahead, please.
What I would suggest is that the motion should be in the form of adopt a resolution regarding the proposal. Same thing, just a resolution.
Is this earmarked specifically for the use of the workout center? Or does it apply to suites A, B, and C with regard to card playing, mahjong, etc.? Because there's some consideration that there are a lot of outsiders still using the suites for either cards or some other elements. So does that apply in all instances, or are we gearing this strictly to the workout center?
it's just rules now geared to just that a local guest visiting in with their membership friend wouldn't impact the membership using the facilities. Right now, cards are played in the afternoon. There's plenty of room for their local guests to come in and play cards with them. We have no issue with that. The only impact we have directly is we know in the mornings the tennis courts are full. So therefore, that's just restricted to only members only. The same thing with the gyms. We don't allow local guests to come in with their local friend, membership friend, because it's just too busy. And we have too much of a risk of displacing a member using that facility at that time frame.
Well, Paul, that also applies to all of the fitness classes, massage, etc., that it's residents first, and we don't want any other activities in that period to make sure residents have first choice. At least that's my understanding of why we're doing all this, so that we don't have a problem that residents are not served.
But I don't believe this is stated in such a way that it applies to all fitness classes, because the addition here is that it is at the discretion of the director for group fitness and court sports.
Yeah, because like the current rule states that right now, no local guests are allowed, period, in the morning. But we know now there are several exercise classes in the morning that would be open and not impact membership use. So therefore, we amended the rule to let the directors be determined on a day-to-day basis what, is going to be closed out to members only, or allow guests to come in and use it.
This is still a board addressing the issue right now. Third day, we'll open it to the audience. I see hands going up there. It's like the debates last night, the hands are flying and everything.
It's still at the board level.
I think, I mentioned this previous meeting that what we're doing is a moving target. It's in transition. We're trying to adapt what's best for the members. Not just the 1,900 unit owners, but the 3,400 unit owners. So a lot of people, a lot of residents, they should have first rights to the facilities. I don't think anyone would disagree with that, because if they got bumped out, we'd have another issue coming up before us. And we keep changing these resolutions. We want to make another resolution. We're working through one season now where we've adopted and developed these resolutions. We've given the facilities directors, Patrick, Johan, some leeway to let locals in, I believe. We don't specifically say that, but I think we do it. And let's work on what we got. I keep saying, you as the people we represent and who are paramount to what we're trying to do up here as board, the long range plan committee, the facilities plan committee, you're the key. And I don't think we as a board should keep changing these things until we really have a feel. We got March to work through, see how 8:30 until 11:30 works as far as parking. It looks pretty good right now. So let's the facilities managers work on this and give us some leeway. And let's work it out. I mean, we don't have to keep making these damn resolutions time and time again until we know what we really have to do.
I'll comment now after Ray. I appreciate what Ray said. Another way to quantitatively say this is we're 50 days into a 90-day measuring period that we've never done anything like this before, where we made a change where we said owners and only owners Monday through Friday before noon. We wanted to solve a parking problem. We wanted to better understand capacity utilization and how it's all working out. So we're gathering this data. I would echo Ray's thoughts that we're 50 days into 90 days. Let's just run it out through March, and when April comes around, we can assess, we can measure, we can interpret. Subsequent decisions can be made. And it's a beginning point. And part of the language in here, we need to allow management to have some flexibility. If there is openings and we see there's shortfalls, changes can be made. But let's first take care of the people who pay the bills around here, the owners.
Well, if we looked at what we bought and what the mandate is that the facilities that are owned here by, under the control of the foundation are exclusively for the use only of the members. What's happened, and I can tell you, in the early days it wasn't an issue because we didn't have a full complement of owners here. And we had outside people just walk in. We had people that were giving lessons either in tennis or in the workout facility or massage that were basically coming in not as a guest of an owner, but as a guest of an employee. So that kind of measured over as time progressed, and what we're trying to do now is eliminate that in total. But the bottom line is that everything here that is under our jurisdiction is strictly, exclusively for the use of the owners. And I think we need to have the situation be handled by the manager, see what's going on. He's here full-time, and if we have to make some adjustments, we make the adjustments according to what's actually happening. I think we've gotten rid of some of the illegal entry, put it that way. But I think it's up to the manager, somebody that's here full-time, to take a look at the owners are being protected for their exclusive right. That's all. Once that's established, we can make any side agreement that we need to further enhance the owner's rights to invite guests in. Okay. There are people in here that are supposedly guests, but they're here one time as a guest, and the next time as they come in, they're really not a guest of an owner, but they're guests of themselves. That's another issue. Okay, so you need the manager. We need to help Patrick, Johan, okay, massage people, the whole 9 yards. It's not easy to do. I'm not saying that, but that's how the mechanism has to work.
It seems to me that in order to satisfy what the board has said, this proposed language will loosen the regulation up sufficiently to allow the manager to make those determinations. Because if you don't adopt this resolution, then we are back to the current language, which just says nobody comes in between those hours in that time period. So I don't know where we are with the motion, but I would make a motion to adopt a resolution approving the proposed new language to the local guest rule.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Further discussion?
I want to make two comments. I know there are people in this audience dying to talk, but this is a board meeting and we need to get the board stuff done. There's a place for all of you to make comments after. I've had owners comment to me at two levels. One is we don't charge guests enough. We pay $1,535 a year to be members of this community, and they pay a marginal amount of money to come in as guests, so there's some sensitivity to that. But I've also heard, and I know there's some people in the audience that have said, but we have an individual that is a contractor that is very good for us as owners, but in order to make it worth that person's while to be able to come and do this for the benefit of the owners, she would like periodically to have a very limited number of guests. I think the proposed new language was designed to continue to focus on limiting guests in the period of time that it would impact the owners, especially with parking, but give some flexibility to the directors. And we've spent a lot of time talking to the directors, and we've said if it's not abused, if it's used with discretion, that we'd like to give you a little that's what this says, we'd like to give you a little flexibility to try to say what's best for all the people in the community. So I think that's part of the background of this language.
I just wanted to say, and I don't know how this will help with a decision, but overall, there seems to be issues with who's accountable for saying who a guest is and who isn't. How do we enforce it, and how are we monitoring it? And is it being done across the board equally for all the classes and for all the fitness? I mean, this goes along with people checking in. How do we monitor this? It's a similar kind of situation, and that's why I'm saying I don't know how it is going to fix anything, but I think that is part of how we would look at sticking with the current language and changing it. How do we monitor this? Who is monitoring it? Who says there's, a guest in this class or not in that class, or there should be, or there, and I guess that's going to the directors, correct?
Yes, the directors are to be approved by Paul, the
Okay.
manager. So they, they put their necks out there, so they need to be cautious about how they approach this.
Actually, this is really simple. We hired Paul, okay, to enforce, okay, what the documents provide. And he's got that flexibility and he's got that authority. So why do we need a whole bunch of writing for him to do his job?
Because the current language does not give Paul the authority to be flexible.
Right.
It says, however, the board may expand or further limit guest use of the facilities depending on member demand. So based on member demand, it's now before the board to determine whether or not it wants to limit or leave things the same. If we adopt the proposed new language, it will give Paul the flexibility to oversee and manage the issues raised in this guest room.
And I think we should let the manager manage. We shouldn't handcuff the individual. It's not our job. We're the board. That's line management. It's a line management function. I would also add that in my perfect world, we would approve this, but the general manager wouldn't make any changes until April, so we get the first 90 days in under what we started, so it doesn't cause any aberrations in the metrics we're trying to get.
I agree with that, David. And what you're saying, Jeff, if you want to insert that, why don't we just take the part after Jim, wherever the hell Jim was.
Take the last sentence.
Just selected group fitness and court sports classes as determined by directors and authorized by GM as part of the last sentence. That modifies the whole thing.
It's fine, I have no problem with that.
But I go along with David's first option is to let's work it through this first season, let's see what happens. Give the directors some latitude. They're hired, as Jerry said, to do a job. Let them do their job. They know. There's a monitoring problem that we're missing here, as was brought up by Jerry, or Karen, I'm sorry. How many locals are coming in? Who are the locals? Are they being monitored anyway? Are they, Paul? The locals? We don't know.
Yeah, when you come in, again, you're supposed to check in. If you're not checking in, you say, well, who are you? And then you say, well, I'm a guest of so-and-so. And at that point, there's a guest sign sheet where they sign in.
Is there guests within Pelican Marsh? I assume they'd have their own key fob, but
No,
they're outside of.
Guests of a member do not get a key fob, but they.
No, I'm saying, if
No, I listened to what you said.
yeah. We don't have any way alone the locals that are coming in here. People outside of Pelican Marsh are coming in and using the facilities.
All local guests coming in should be accompanied by a member checking them in.
Right, that's,
But they can't get into the fitness center without
but
a
they're
key
not
fob.
monitored.
They cannot get into the fitness center without a key fob. And so
That's
the
what I guess.
hope is that the guest or the owner takes them to sign in at the front desk and they pay the guest fee.
You know, this is not a jail. We can only do so much. And the people up front are supposed to monitor. And we're taking statistics and we're gathering data on that. And I think we should let it go, in my opinion, the way it is. And Ray, let me ask you a question. Are you in agreement with the proposed new language as you suggested by deleting that last sentence?
Well, I did say that, so obviously I'm agreeing with it, but I also said, I believe from David's remark that we give it the season to work out before we do it.
One of the problems with that, and I really don't disagree with you, but one of the problems that we have with that is the regulations have already been loosened to the extent that we now allow certain guests to come into the facility based on the way the rule has been administered for the last couple of weeks. So if we change it, if we go back to the current language, you might as well leave the current language the way it is and just preclude guests based on the current language. Because what you're doing is you're really creating more confusion if you adopt the proposed new language.
I don't think we're causing any confusion because we're not changing anything. We've been following, as you said, this policy for the last few weeks since the last board meeting. We verbally talked about it without formally passing it. And
I tell you what, let's not kill a dead horse, all right? Why don't we just table this situation until the May meeting? Paul can come in with a report as to what transpired and what his recommendations would be on how to handle the guest situation.
the only issue I would have with that is technically we'd have to have no guests whatsoever because of the restrictions under the original language. So
We kill there?
if we just pass this, then we can still measure it, and we don't have to make any changes, but the directors and management have the flexibility to do so prospectively.
Right, because if you stay with the original one versus the meeting in January where the gentleman came in and said, I want to bring my friends in my car to have coffee and play a little cards in the morning. If you stay with one, you're telling them no, and yet in the last meeting, we're saying, yeah, we'll work out as long as you can come in one car. So you're almost right back to this revised part of the rules just to accommodate that, and by the end of this season, we'll find out if that really works. We're breaking old habits. We're changing what we always used to do. And we're trying to tighten it up to make it available for the people who pay for it. And that's the residents. So
I'm going to call for a vote.
Are we going to hear from the,
No, that's
before? We're going to do the vote without hearing any.
Let me just make a statement with regard to that. The agenda provides that the residents can make comments toward the end of the meeting after this board has decided everything. However, I think historically, before the vote is taken on anything, the board can discuss, which it has discussed, and then it should be open to the residents for comment. Then the board can vote. And that would be my opinion.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna open it up to the residents to make comments. You'll be limited to 3 minutes, and if we already covered what your concern was in the proposed language.
Yeah, we don't want to hear about anything else but what the thing is on the table.
So if you would please come up here and introduce yourself and say where you live. And
Do I really have to come up?
yes, you do, because we record this, and this way you're on camera and it's audible.
Hello, my name is Elena Duggan, and I'm here with a group of my friends from yoga class. Is that identification?
Where do you live? What?
Troon Lakes,
Thank you.
9281 Troon Lakes.
Oh, we don't need to address just the community.
So we're here because we're very concerned about the loss of our teacher, Ellen, and we are, of course, are not privy to conversations that she may have had with management, but we are very concerned that she might be leaving. We all agree that we all come to class. She has an enormous following in this community, enormous. Yoga, chair yoga, whatever else she teaches. She's a very, very special teacher. And she has an incredible style. Not all teachers are created equal. And we feel this would be a tremendous loss, not just to us, but to the community if she does leave. We basically want to make that point. I will just interject something here. Ellen is rigorous about having people sign in. I mean, every single class, she's running around with her board, having everybody sign in. So she is extremely meticulous about how this should be handled. We basically understand all of these issues about the parking and the space in the room, et cetera, but we do feel that the rules should be across the board for everything. Not just, she happens to teach in the morning, so she might be most effective, but we do feel that if she is being restricted in any way, it should be across the board, and that may be her main bone of contention. I don't really know that. But at this point, none of us, we're all there at 10 or 10:15. None of us have ever had a parking problem at all. And that's pretty much what I want to say. The bottom line is we really don't want to lose her as a teacher. We feel she's a tremendous asset to this community, and I think all of my friends out there, we're all here because we would really like to be able to find a solution here where she can continue to teach and to serve this community. We think she's really important.
I'd like to ask a question to help me to understand. This rule does not affect any member of this community. It's only focused on restricting non-owners, non-members of the community. It sounds like she's a very successful yoga teacher, so how often would there be an opening that, even if we didn't have this, that people outside the community would be able to join if she was so successful? So help me to understand.
Honestly, Ken, I don't know what the numbers are. I just believe, and somebody else can maybe chime in here, that I think she feels that, am I right, ladies, gentlemen? That she feels that she's being singled out. Am I correct? Somebody else please step up. Can somebody else
Can I
speak?
speak? Is it all right?
Go ahead.
I'm Charlie Tambro from the Chateau. We feel that she had, there have been 3 classes that I guess, from listening to this, Patrick has decided have to stay within the rule, for the first rule. No outsiders coming in, okay? All the other classes, fitness classes, are classes that are at in the fitness area are open to anybody else. She feels that these 3 classes, we all feel that these 3 classes have been singled out.
Okay, I mean.
Okay, you understand?
But you actually, I heard what you said, but you didn't answer my question,
Which
which is, I'm hearing that there's a person that's a contract person in the fitness center that is so important and so successful that you hate to lose her, but I'm just trying to understand if that's the case, where the issue is with people that are not members of the community. It sounds like she would be full simply with the community members, and then it wouldn't be an issue. So I'm just trying to get a better understanding.
Well, let me just give you a small example. We have a 10:15 class on Wednesday, which is the most popular class, okay? We had 34 come in. It doesn't matter how many come in, we always make room. We always made room.
There's never been any issue.
Never, ever.
Of being too crowded, and I think
And we've never refused anybody
we've
to
never
come
turned
in.
anybody back.
But 2 things. One is, and I thank you, that makes it clear. But let's go back to the fact that we're still trying to make sure we have enough parking. And we're a month and a half into the season, and there was great concern last fall when we added pickleball that we put too much stress on the parking, and we didn't know if the 20% more parking would be enough. So far, it sounds as though we're okay, but we're only a month and a half into the system. So we're attempting to accommodate everybody with the rules and regulations. So we're fair to all the constituents. We're fair to the pickleball people and the tennis people, etc. So I appreciate your input, but when we finish, just understand our attempt is that all the constituents are satisfied as best we can, but we certainly have not singled anyone out and said that we're trying to make it an even-handed approach to be fair to everybody. But the more input we have, the better able to make a decision.
Well, I'm there, I go to class Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. There's never been a parking issue. And I get there about 9:45. But I'm just speaking for myself.
And for me.
Excuse me.
Well, excuse me, but the one thing that we really want is for you to be equal for everybody. Not pick and choose that some can and some can't. Make it your ruling for everybody.
Well, the ruling was for everybody.
That's right.
As long as you were a member, you were welcome. And if you weren't welcome until noon.
We understand that, and that's what we would like to see maintained.
Well, what I think, Charlene,
Yeah.
what I think I'm hearing is I had the impression you thought your group was being singled out to follow the first rule and others weren't.
Exactly, and that's what's happened.
And I'm puzzled by that because it's supposed to be universal across the board. So the question is, if we go to the proposed amendment, does that help your situation apply universally across the board to all activities being conducted in this building?
No, but if you stay with the original original rule, yes.
Charlene, your objection is to selected group fitness classes,
Right. Yeah,
that language.
right, exactly.
And that speaks to the fact that we have talked about allowing directors and management to make decisions at their discretion, so.
And how is that going to be possible?
I think we're getting our wires crossed here. So,
Getting our wires crossed?
yes, because the communication was different. When we sent an email blast out a few weeks ago, we told membership that the board is going to relax the current local guest rule, where they now can come in the restricted morning time, Monday through Friday, and use the facilities, as long as they didn't impact the classes or facilities that are in high member demand. In that email, we did say, however, that you're welcome to come in the morning, have coffee, and do some things, except you can't play tennis, you can't use a gym, and you can't use selected exercise classes that we know are busy with membership. And we actually named 2 classes. It's a spin class in the morning. We don't have them in our bikes, so we know that those are full by guests. And also, we talked about the morning class yoga is very busy with membership. So we actually named those 2.
And was Judy's class named as well, Fitness with a Difference? At 8 o'clock?
Yes, it's in the.
I believe it was.
All right, maybe we named 3 Pacifics. Now, this new proposed amendment says, we're not going to name any particular class. We're just going to leave it to the discretion of the directors to decide when a class should be closed out to local guests and only allow membership.
An observation based on some of the information I heard here. If you have, that's wonderful, you have 34 people that show up for yoga at 10:15. We only can put 32 people on a tennis court, and they got 34, and that's residents. I don't know, maybe there's more
We haven't
capacity.
had a problem with parking.
And we haven't had a problem with parking, so I'm not inclined to bring more in and have them be non-residents. But,
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Were there other comments? Okay.
I'd call the motion.
That we,
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know if any, if the
I didn't see any hands, so I'm going to bring it back to the board.
Missy, go ahead.
I was just going to make one point about the selected group fitness classes, Missy McFadden in Montclair. I go to the 8 o'clock class. I only think it's going to cause more confusion for Paul to try to figure out which classes are busy and which aren't. Because sometimes January is pretty quiet. Suddenly February, we're mobbed in there. So I think it's going to put bigger burden on you to try to figure out who's in, who's out, and the residents are going to say, well, now, it's not too busy this month, but maybe residents and guests. It's too busy for you to come this month, but maybe you can come next month. It just may cause problems for management.
Well, thank you. And we'll, hopefully we'll be able to measure some of this come April and May when we gather data, so that'll be helpful. Okay, so we had a motion and a second. We've had discussion. It's time to call for a vote.
So we are voting on the proposed new language.
Yes.
with the strikeout made by Ray.
Please tell me the strikeout.
Yes, please.
The last
The
sentence.
strikeout was the last sentence.
The board may further,
Yeah. The
That's
board- Yes, the board may expand or further limit guest use of the facilities depending on member demand. Strike it, it makes no difference because the board can always do that.
So-
If you want to strike it, strike it.
Thank you, Jeff. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, as amended, aye.
It's aye.
All opposed? Abstain?
I'm going to abstain because I'm still concerned that I never felt that I got clarification if this is going to resolve the yoga class people's concern. I think this says that it should be universally applied. There's a perception it's not universally applied, so I don't know if this helps resolve the issue. So
I'm in agreement with Jim.
So you abstaining? Is that what you're saying, you're abstaining? So we have 2 abstains, we have what, 4? 5. Okay, so it's 5-0-2. 2 abstains would be Jim and Karen. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Kate.
Okay, new business. Approval of design review committee law.
The Design Review Committee received 3 applications this past month for changes to the outside of residents' homes, and actually one is dealing with a community association where they're going to make a change to their landscaping, which is in view of the Baltimore Boulevard. We reviewed all 3 applications, and it's all conforms with our rules and regulations and guidelines that we're recommending the board approve.
Discussion? Let's call for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. Let's proceed to board member comments. I open it up to my colleagues.
I had talked about looking at, and Paul has looked into this, maybe moving forward with updating of bathrooms at the courts. And I didn't know, is that something that we need to vote on, or how is that going to proceed?
I'll comment on that because we just had a finance committee.
Okay, thank you.
The question is, it was originally scheduled for next fiscal year. We have more than enough money to be able to do it, and the finance committee said to Paul, let's get it done. So it's just a matter of scheduling it.
Okay, good.
How much?
11,000 and change.
That's what we have budgeted. I don't think we need that much, but that's what we have budgeted.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question about candidates night. I think that this board needs to make a decision on who's going to moderate candidates night. I believe that our general manager should be the moderator. He has he is the perfect neutral person to handle this event. I'd be highly concerned if any residents, and I don't know how many residents want to step up to moderate such an event. But in order to make sure that no one gets bent out of shape, I would recommend to this board that Paul be the moderator. The questions, I understand, are being submitted ahead of time. I don't think those should be the only questions answered that night. I think people should have the right to come in, fill out 3 by 5 cards, and have those questions put into the mix. If Paul feels he needs assistance from another staff member to sort through that, I'm fine with that. But I believe this board's only job is to make sure we have a candidates night, we have Paul as the moderator, and that is the end.
Could I comment?
Yep.
Well, I agree that no one from the board should be a moderator. But I personally recommended to Paul that Sandy has a good understanding of what's going on in the community. He has the President's Committee. And I think it would be very helpful to have an owner, whether you call him the moderator or the assistant, talk. I think it would be helpful to Paul so he's not up there alone trying to make the decisions. And I'm a little uncomfortable putting Paul in a position where he has to moderate it directly. So I would suggest that we've already talked to Sandy and to see if he'd be interested. So I'm putting him on the spot now, but I would recommend that he be the moderator for the night.
Respectfully, Ken, I would disagree with that. Nothing against Sandy or any other resident. I have no problem if he assists Paul in the process, but historically, the general managers have been available to do that, and it removes any question about did he know this or that or so. I just personally do not feel uncomfortable as a board member unless the manager does this. I have no objection if Sandy assists him in sorting out the questions, but I think the ultimate responsibility belongs to the person that we have hired that represents all the residents.
Thank you.
Maybe we could kill one bird with 2 stones, or one stone with 2 birds. Is there an issue with Paul getting assistance from Sandy? I mean, why does it have to be one or another? Paul should be the moderator, Sandy can assist, questions are going to be submitted, and between the 2 of them, somebody can look at a question and hand it to the moderator or vice versa, and let them both do it.
We have at least 3 of the 4 candidates. I don't know where the 4th is. I would put it out, see if they have a problem one way or the other.
I've got no problem.
I have no problems.
I have no problem with Paul.
Daniel's not here.
I don't see Nathaniel.
Okay, we'll continue that. Let's continue. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we got it.
How does Sandy feel? Do not have a problem. I'll be glad to work with Paul, and we will coordinate the questions in a very equitable manner.
Thank you.
I'm fine with that. Is that agreeable to the board?
The moderator is not going to make any decisions. They're going to sort the questions out, make sure there's no duplicate. Are we trying to create a rocket here? Come on.
All right, Jim, thank you. Anything else? Jerry? Do you have a question?
No, I think we're fine. Just wanted to screw up enough.
Okay. Jeff?
No, I have nothing to say.
Great.
No, I think between the two of them, they can sort the questions out, make sure there's no duplicates and redundancy in questioning. And that, you know, the rules of asking questions are followed. Sandy and Paul can handle that.
Ken?
Yeah, I do, actually. First, it's one of them's missing, but I'd like to thank the four of you. I mentioned to Matt this morning that it's really good for this community to have a level of interest. We've oftentimes had to go around knocking on doors to get people to run for the board. And there's certainly a level of enthusiasm that's come this year that we haven't seen for a while. I guess the only comment I would make is that this community is made up of constituents from a lot of different places. It is a community of bocce ball players, it is a community of card players, it is a community of fitness players and tennis players and pickleball players. And I've been a little troubled at some of the commentary that has come from Steve and his group related to their going forward. I am excited that we've got the people we have running, but there have been discrepancies or there have been commentaries that had you been here long enough, you'd know they were inaccurate. And I would just ask those of you on that committee to take the time to work as hard as you can, put as many announcements out, meet as many as you can. That's up to each of the four guys to how they want to do it. But try to be accurate when you're referring to commentary regarding the board. This board has been very open, in fact, more open than past boards. There was a comment recently about how the finance committee the executive committee makes decisions without notifying board members. That's just not correct. Every executive committee meeting, many of which have other board members than the three of us who are the executive committee. But beyond that, Paul writes detailed results of those meetings and sends them to the board ahead of time. No decision is made on the part of the executive committee, but you can't run a multi-million-dollar organization with 3,500 constituents by meeting once a month. So the executive committee is charged to make decisions regarding how to proceed and recommend, but we do not make any changes without board approval. That's number one. Number two, I don't know how you could be more open about what we've done than what we've done. As far as no long-range planning, we've had a series of long-range plans. And as a result of those long-range plans, in the past, not much got done. So we had a survey a couple years ago, in 2018, that had recommendations. Now, I know that there are members of this community that felt it was biased, but it was done as best it could be done at the time to try to understand the interest in the community. We moved forward, but we listened to all the constituents. I have a different set of constituents than some members of this community do and some members of this board do. I am not a pickleball player. I am not, in fact, if you saw my left foot, you'd know I can't do anything much right now because it's healing. But I'm not a tennis player. My wife is a tennis player. Some of my best friends, by the way, are tennis players. But I was president of Grand Isle for 6 years. It is not a tennis-focused community, so my outlook is different than others. That is, I come from a community that saw this foundation as giving it other things. I think there's a young lady in the back of the room that does not get enough accolades for what she does. Now there's Lynn, I don't think I need to name you because I think most people know who you are. If you look at the level of activity in this community that comes as a result of the work she does, we get the broadest base of owners. and we get more support. And I think she deserves credit. But I also think each community, each constituency has to respect the interests and the desires of each other. And there will be times when we ask the board to make decisions that will upset certain elements of the community. Today, this meeting is the best example. We're trying to do the best we can, but we've got an issue with a piece of the fitness center. We can't please everybody all the time, but I want to go on record to saying that I resent some of the wording and some of the commentary that this group came up with as a way to support their candidacy. You guys deserve to be heard. You guys have the background to help our community. Let's do this thing in a positive, constructive way and not feel you have to make negative comments about the board to strengthen your candidacy. I would like to see you guys continue doing the good stuff. I would look forward, since I am going to be on this board next year, I would look forward to having new people on the board, but I would like it to be a positive, supportive time over the next 30 days instead of finger pointing. Thank you.
Ken, I agree with the premise that you'd like positive, because I agree with that as well. But I also do want to say that just because I play tennis does not mean that I don't represent the community. And you almost said that because you said that your constituency is not the tennis community. My constituency is the community, even though I play tennis.
Well, I apologize if that's what you said, or what you thought I said.
That's what I heard.
What I was trying to say is that I hear things from the people that I talk to that are different than what you hear by talking to your tennis people or the pickleball people.
I don't just talk to tennis people
No,
either.
but what I was trying to say is we as a board, I was actually being positive, have a responsibility to everyone, and we try to do the best we can.
And I agree with that.
Thank you.
I'd like to throw my 2 cents in here. I was a newbie in 2018. I was appointed to the board, excuse me, 2017. I was appointed to the board with 2 resignations. Ken was one, I was one. I've never served on the foundation board. And I know that's a recycled position. You can see some of the faces on here. But the executive...
We're old, sorry.
19 years?
The executive committee was formed, and as a manager myself for over 15 years. I've worked with a lot of boards. They all have a form of executive committee, especially if there's a 5 or 7 member board. And they've got to meet. They've got to meet with the manager, whether it's from a management company like I was or on-site like our general manager. We have to meet with him. He knows what's going on. He presents it to us. We go through it. So to say or suggest, I take umbrage to that, because we do not make decisions, as Ken said. We review the information presented to us from Paul on a weekly basis. What's going on? What concerns are being presented by the members of this community? And we try to address those from everyone. I don't care who it is that comes in here. If it's a person who's got their house up for bankruptcy, or the guy that owns 4 homes in 4 different continents, and I know both ends of that spectrum. We represent all of you. We, as Ken says, and Dave, we do not make decisions at those executive meetings. We listen to what's being said. We present, Paul presented the minutes to the full board. They see an outline of what was discussed. And then if necessary, it's discussed in future meetings. It's all transparent. We do not hide anything. We do not make decisions. And I do resent that suggestion that we do that. We represent all owners here. Everyone on this board, whether like-minded, independent-minded, or forward-looking, we represent this community. And that's it.
I would like to say that for the last 2 years or so, since Ray and Ken came on the board, that there's a difference in philosophy on this board than from previous boards. Previous boards, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, played very close to the vest. And basically, decisions were made in the executive committee, and the boards rubber stamped those decisions. I'm not saying there were never disagreements, there were. But as far as this board is concerned, the executive committee, as Ray indicated, and as Ken said, is made up, the president is made up of the president, the vice president, the treasurer, the secretary, and board members historically, prior to 2 years ago, did not attend these executive committee meetings. But now, the executive committee meetings are not limited to just those officers. If an officer is not available, then a board member is able to sit in. They're invited. I've been invited to several of those meetings, and I know Karen has also. And in fact, I think all of us have at some point invited to sit in when a board member wasn't available. And I want to confirm or reiterate that although there is discussion about topics, no decisions are made. Let me put it like this, no final decisions are made. At the committee meetings, sometimes the executive committee will come up with one or more recommendations. Those recommendations always go to this board. No decisions are made by this board without comment by the board and without comment by the residents. So I just want to explain the procedure in case there is any doubt as to how this board operates.
Okay, thank you. I don't have much to add after all those thoughts, other than I started that rotation process a couple of years ago for a number of reasons. For new board members, I thought it was a great way for them to be onboarded. Number two, when you need someone who has a special skill, like when we started talking about long-range planning, I invited Jim to sit in. Other times it was just a matter of someone had a conflict out of the standing officers, so another member would come in. So it has worked out well. The comments about transparency, I'm very disappointed about, and hopefully people make generic remarks about transparency but never put any details to it. It's meaningless, but it is misleading. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over. If there's no additional board member comments.
I just have one thing, and this is a entirely different subject. At the last meeting, Ken, you suggested that we have a forum for the congressional delegates running to replace Francis Rooney, our congressman. To bring you up to date to that, there's a lot of people who have announced that they're running at both sides of the aisle, but until June, I believe, when they finally have to file, that's where the rubber hits the pavement. So I would suggest if we're going to have a forum, that it be done after the filing date, then you know who the real players are, and then you invite the candidates running to replace Francis Rooney as our congressman, that you have it here, and it would be beneficial for the residents or guests who are in the community.
Good idea, Jim, thank you.
All right.
Isn't it in April that they have to have enough signatures to get on the ballot?
You're probably right, Jerry. It is a interesting process, and right now about 4 of them are still involved in the state legislature, so they're not here until in May. So you don't want to do anything premature, or you're not going to find out who the real players are.
Thanks, you.
All right, I'm going to open it up to resident comments. I'm going to ask whoever wants to speak to raise their hand. We're going to select that person and ask them to come up, identify themselves. Steve, why don't you go ahead? Comments are limited to 3 minutes.
Is that 3 yoga lady minutes? Steve Burke, Troon Lakes. So just a statement, and then I'd love to hear some discussion or explanation from the board regarding the Meet the Candidate night and the idea that there are going to be pre-submitted questions this year. 3x5 cards, not necessary to identify the questioner. It can be done in secret. And I wonder about the advisability of having questions submitted for a public meeting where volunteers are running for public office to be asked questions by questioners who are not identified. I don't think that's reasonable. If there's an explanation that makes it reasonable, I'd love to hear it. The problem as I see it is that, first of all, if the questions are being submitted previously, then someone needs to sort of vet these questions for content and suitability. I'm not sure who that would be, whether that would be Sandy, whether it be Paul. Guys are going to look at these questions, you're going to decide if they're suitable, you're going to combine questions hopefully because they're going to be the same question over and over again. I get that. But my issue is that questioners can remain anonymous, and I don't think that's reasonable. Thank you.
Let me answer that first, because there are people in the community that have approached me and said, I do not want, I'm afraid that there would be consequences if my name was associated, but I have some real questions regarding each of the 4 candidates. How do we do that? And I said, there will be an independent person, in this case I was thinking of Sandy, that will review for the reasonableness. We don't want any personal questions coming out. We don't want someone to get up and ask something that they shouldn't ask. We don't want people asking the same questions, and we want to control to ensure that we're fair to all 4 candidates so that they all have a chance to answer questions. But it will be open afterwards, Steve, after that, if there are any other questions that haven't otherwise been asked, it would be open to anyone that took the time to come to the meeting. So it isn't like it's only from the writing on a 3x5 card. So if somebody had a question and they felt it wasn't otherwise asked, they're more than welcome to stand up. But let me tell you one of the problems the board has had at recent meetings, and that is that people got up and ended up, we lost control, and they would go over 3, 4, 5 questions at a board meeting, and it would go on. And then by the time they got to near the end of the meeting with resident comments, a lot of the people had left. So we want to try to do it in a structured way. Now, the reason I'm making the comments is I'm on the board next year, whereas Dave is on his way out. So he said to me, how do you think is the best way to do this that's fair to everybody? And what we're trying to do is do something that's fair to all 4 of the candidates, and we think this is the fairest way. So the questions will be asked ahead of time, written on a 3x5 card, and you can put your name on it if you want or not. Sandy and Paul will review all the submissions. The board will not see anything nor have any comment regarding it. And like John Roberts said, I'm not going to ask this question because I don't think it's fair. So Sandy will, with Paul, say this should not be asked. It's very personal, or it has nothing to do with running for the board, or there is 4 of the same questions to ask 4 different ways. We'll make those 4 one question, or there seems to be a lot of questions for one guy and not much for another. That's not fair. We want to try to get more distribution of questions. So they'll have a little management responsibility. The board will stay out of it. We don't want to get in the middle of this. We want a good election. We want active people to be wanting to run for the board, and so we're saying this is an independent way to do it.
Steve, I just want to, I think that, I'll just say that I think that Sandy and Paul will do a much better job than any of the commentators that we've witnessed on TV at some of these events, such as yesterday. I know they'll do a much better job.
I agree with you completely. completely, and I don't have any issue with any of this, I think it sounds smashing. The problem I have is this anonymous nature of some of these questions, and I don't think that's appropriate.
Well, first of all, Sandy's a neighbor of yours, and he's not going to do anything to piss you off, because you're going to, in fact...
Point of order, he's moving.
Oh, he is? Oh, well, then I guess you can do whatever you damn well please, Sandy.
Sure.
No, seriously, Steve, it's fairest to everyone, because there are some people in the community that want to ask a question. They're not sure that they want their name associated with it because they don't want to upset people. Now, I'm going to make it specific for a moment. I've had a couple of tennis people say they have some concerns that they want asked, but if they get up and raise it in front, they're afraid the same thing's going to happen to them that happened to Dave, which was people telling him to leave Pelican Marsh and move, and he's not wanted. So they're saying it has to be asked. I don't know whether it's fair or not. So if I said, Sandy, I trust your fairness, I trust your position in the community to sort out the ones that really should be asked and ask them. That's why I wanted Sandy involved and not just Paul. I would not put that burden on Paul. So that's the way it's going to be.
Rocco, did you have a question earlier?
It's a young lady out there that had her hand up.
Can we bring the mic out to Rocco? Rocco, we'll bring the mic out to you. Hang on.
No, let him walk up. Come on, you're going to run for the board, you got to walk,
How
right?
many stints do you have? Right.
Moses got one of these, I got the second one. In any event, I have a question for Paul and the board. And
Can you
preface it.
Can you identify?
This refers to...
Identify yourself.
Rocco, identify yourself, please.
Okay, I can speak without this. But in any event, this refers to old boards, of which I was a member many years ago. It has to do with the front of the building, the entranceway specifically. And normally, there is a plaque out there. When you're facing the entrance, it's on the left side. Most people don't even see it. My recommendation is, it's down now, being cleaned up and so forth. And in order to make it more visible and recognize the people who are responsible for founding and building this structure, when we remount that plaque, I'd like to see it go up on the right side where people normally will look when they're entering this building.
That's the plan.
Is that the plan?
That is the plan.
Then we can all go home to dinner.
Okay, I guess we can home.
Thank you.
I think we're going to adjourn, because I got...
No. President Pat, Andy, you have a-
Young lady back
Just
there.
very quickly, Andy Selden, Troon Lakes, I don't need that. Can you clarify for me, in terms of the questions for candidates tonight, if I ask a question, is it going to be asked of all four candidates, or do you anticipate that it'll be directed specifically to Matt versus...
Let me answer that. Historically, all candidates answer each question that is asked.
Thank you. Thank you.
But there could be a specific question regarding a specific candidate.
Could be.
For example, it might be, tell me about the number of years you worked on the past board in Rocco's case.
I mean, historically, these meetings sometimes are as short as 15, 20 minutes, you know, maybe it goes an hour. So I'm not anticipating a 2-hour, 3-hour meeting. Anything else, folks? Going once, going twice, up, Rich?
One question.
Come on up here, buddy, use the microphone.
I'm like Rocco, I don't need the microphone.
What's Spongy story?
Question in terms of process and procedure.
Would you introduce yourself?
Identify yourself.
Rich Drexler, Le Chateau. The proxies are all mailed back in to, is it Linda or Paul at the office? At the office. Who opens all the proxies and tabulates the votes?
Well, that's a multiple answer question. They come to the office where they're accumulated. And then usually, if I remember correctly, we hire two proxy officers to monitor, so at the annual meeting, they're certified by 2 owners. So staff controls the process, accumulates the information, and then we have proxy officers who substantiate the work that they did.
Those aren't open until the night of the meeting.
No.
The ballots are not
So-
open.
All right.
So the, I think, the election, last election was back in 2018. I just come on board, so the process was, the proxy is a proxy / ballot. So we need a proxy to identify a quorum for the meeting and also elect the officers. So yes, when we receive the proxy / ballot, it is open by administration. It's myself and Linda. If we need, or getting too far behind, we'll assign one other admin director to help us out. We open up the proxies and get a spreadsheet that tabulates who's turned the proxy in, so we can count and make sure we have a quorum. If we see that we are running behind, we can send an email blast out saying, hey, we only received so many proxies, you gotta get the proxy in so we can have an official meeting. So, and at the same time, yes, we will then be counting the votes. But that's kept internal between us three.
Well, the other thing is you can bring your proxy. I mean, you can wait until the meeting to bring a proxy in. So we don't know, none of us know the final result until after the proxies that are brought into the meeting.
Yeah, but we have a lot of the ballots and proxies pre-counted up to,
Yeah.
then we have like maybe 50, 75, maybe 100 turn in at the entrance of the meeting. We add those to the count, then we can then announce the total count.
Is that okay?
Yeah, I just, but you know 90% of the vote before the people hand in the ballot.
Well, we don't, but they do.
Right?
Yeah.
The two of you.
But we kept in strict confidence in our small little tight group. We did not share any results.
The other question that I had is the 2 people that are the
Officers,
proxy officers. Who selects those?
I'll be selecting them.
Okay. And they come from the community, is that it?
They're owners.
Owners, okay. No further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
Move to adjourn.
Second moved, second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Yeah, I know.
I could have gotten into trouble with that.
I just did that spontaneously.
They're often right.